Part 1. Locked away. The first thing I noticed was the lock. Not the heavy metal kind you see in movies, but the quiet kind. The kind that clicks behind you and pretends it's for your own good. I was standing in the hallway of the nursing home, holding a small overnight bag, when the door closed softly behind me. Click. My daughter-in-law, Rachel, smile. That polite, professional smile people use when they think they've already won. "Don't worry," she said gently. "This is just temporary. For your safety. For my safety." I was 68 years old. I drove my own car, paid my own bills, lived alone in the house I'd bought with 30 years of hard work. But after a minor fall in my kitchen, nothing broken. Just bruised pride Dreddle decided I was no longer capable. My son Ethan was away on a business trip overseas when it happened. Rachel handled everything. Too quickly. She filled out papers I hadn't seen, spoke to doctors I never met, and by the time I realized what was happening, I was standing in a nursing home I hadn't chosen. "Just until Ethan gets back," she promised. "He'll feel better knowing you're being looked after." I wanted to call my son immediately, but my phone was gone. "Oh," Rachel said casually, patting her purse. "The staff will give you one later. They don't allow personal electronics on the first day. It helps patients adjust." Patience. That word stung more than the fall ever had. That night, I lay awake in a narrow bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, listening to the slow beeping of machines and the distant cries of people who truly needed to be there. I didn't. And deep down, I knew this wasn't about my health. It was about my house. The house Rachel had always admired a little too much. The house in the quiet neighborhood. The house with the big backyard and the guest room she once joked would make a great rental. The next morning, a nurse handed me a clipboard. "Just sign here," she said kindly. Standard care agreement. I read every word, and that's when my blood ran cold. My stay wasn't listed as temporary. It was listed as indefinite. At the bottom of the page, someone had already signed as my family representative. Rachel. I asked to use the phone. They said they'd check. Hours passed. No phone. No call. No answers. That evening, as I stared out the small window at the parking lot, a terrible thought hit me. If I was locked in here, who was living in my house? And what I was about to discover would change everything. Before we continue, if you enjoy realistic family drama, hidden betrayal, and karma-driven stories where the truth always comes out, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because what Rachel did next, and what my son discovered when he came home, will shock you. In Part 2, I'll finally get access to a phone, and one call reveals what Rachel has done to my house while I'm trapped inside. Part 2, the call that changed everything. It took 3 days. 3 days of asking politely. 3 days of being told later. 3 days of watching nurses avoid my eyes whenever I mentioned my phone. On the 4th morning, I stopped asking nicely. "I want to speak to the administrator," I said, my voice calm but firm. Now, something in my tone must have shifted, because within minutes I was escorted to a small office near the front desk. The administrator was a tired-looking woman in her 40s, glasses perched low on her nose. "What seems to be the issue?" she asked. "I was admitted here without my consent," I replied. "My family representative made decisions I never approved, and I've not been allowed to contact my son." She frowned slightly and pulled up my file on her computer. As she scrolled, her expression changed. "I see," she murmured. "That was never a good sign." "Is there a problem?" I asked. She hesitated, then said carefully, "According to this, your daughter-in-law signed an emergency placement authorization, but there's no physicians. Note stating you're incapable of independent living." My heart pounded. "So I shouldn't be here," I said. She nodded slowly. "No. At least, Not under these terms. 10 minutes later, she placed a phone in my hand. Make your call, she said quietly. My fingers trembled as I dialed Ethan's number. It rang once, twice. Then, Dad? Ethan's voice came through, strained and surprised. What's wrong? Rachel said you were settling in fine. I closed my eyes. Ethan, I said softly, I need you to listen. I didn't choose to be here. Silence. Then, what do you mean? I told him everything. The rushed paperwork. The missing phone. The indefinite stay. When I finished, there was a long pause on the line. Finally, Ethan exhaled sharply. That's not what Rachel told me. My stomach dropped. What did she tell you? I asked. She said you were confused. That you agreed this was best? That the doctors recommended it. Doctors. Plural. There were no doctors, I said. Just signatures. Ethan swore under his breath. I'm coming home. Tonight. Before hanging up, I asked the question that had been haunting me since the first night. Ethan, who's at my house? Another pause. Then he said, slowly, Rachel told me she was. Taking care of it. Taking care of it. Those words echoed ominously in my mind. 2 hours later, a nurse rushed into my room. Sir, she said, breathless, there's something you need to see. She wheeled in a tablet and showed me a familiar photo. My house. But it didn't look like my house anymore. The living room furniture was gone, replaced with trendy gray couches and minimalist decor. My family photos had vanished from the walls. Neutral artwork hung where my wedding picture used to be. Then I saw the caption, charming 3-bedroom home, perfect for weekend getaways. Now available on Airbnb. My address was listed. My heart sank so hard I thought I might be sick. She turned my house into a rental? I whispered. The nurse nodded awkwardly. I thought you should know. I scrolled. Booked weekends? 5-star reviews? People commenting on how spacious and well-maintained it was. All while I slept in a borrowed bed, wearing a plastic wristband. Rachel hadn't just locked me away. She had erased me. That evening, Ethan called again. His voice was tight, controlled, dangerously calm. Dad, he said, I just landed. I went by the house. I held my breath. There were strangers inside, he continued. A couple from out of town. They thought Rachel owned the place. I could hear his anger now, simmering beneath the surface. She told them you were traveling, he said. Long term. Traveling. I laughed bitterly. In a way, I am. There was a knock at my door. The administrator stepped in. Sir, she said, given the circumstances, you're free to leave whenever you choose. I looked at the door, at the hallway beyond it. Freedom had never felt so heavy. I'll wait, I said quietly. My son is coming. That night I didn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because for the first time, I understood exactly who Rachel was. And I knew one thing for certain. She thought she had won, but she had underestimated 2 things. My patience and my son's loyalty. Don't stop here. If this story has you hooked, subscribe now because the next part is where the confrontation begins. And the truth starts unraveling fast. In part 3, Ethan confronts Rachel face to face, and she makes a mistake she can't take back. Part 3, the woman I thought I knew. Ethan arrived just after sunrise. I saw him through the glass doors before I heard him standing tall, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the hallway like he was preparing for a fight. When he spotted me, something in his expression cracked. "Dad," he said, pulling me into a tight hug. For a moment, I let myself rest there. Then I straightened. "Take me home," I said. We didn't say much during the drive. The silence was heavy, filled with questions neither of us was ready to ask out loud. When we pulled into the driveway, I barely recognized my own house. A keypad lock had been installed on the front door. Ethan frowned. "That wasn't there before?" "No," I said quietly. "It wasn't." Inside, the house smelled different, like air freshener and unfamiliar perfume. My bookshelves were bare. My recliner was gone. Even the kitchen drawers had been reorganized. "This feels like a hotel," Ethan muttered. "It is," I replied. "Just not one I chose." We hadn't even finished walking through the living room when Rachel came down the stairs. She froze when she saw us. "Oh," she said lightly, forcing a smile. "You're back early." Ethan crossed his arms. "Care to explain why my father was locked in a nursing home while strangers slept in his bed?" Her smile didn't falter. If anything, it sharpened. "Ethan," she sighed, "we've been over this. Your father needed supervision, and the house was just sitting empty." "Empty? I was alive," I said calmly. She turned to me, her eyes cold. "With all due respect, you weren't exactly thriving." Ethan's voice rose. "You forged paperwork, Rachel." She rolled her eyes. "I did what was necessary." "For who?" he demanded. She hesitated. Just for a second. "For us," she said. "This house is valuable. The income potential alone." "That house is not yours," Ethan snapped. "But it could be," she replied smoothly. "Eventually." That word hit me like a punch. Eventually. "So this was about inheritance," I said. Rachel shrugged. "Practical planning." Ethan stared at her like he'd never seen her before. "You lied to me." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I protected you. Your father doesn't understand how things work anymore." That's when Ethan did something I'll never forget. He laughed. A short, humorless laugh. "You know what's funny?" he said. "I believed you." Her eyes flickered. "I believed you when you said Dad was confused. I believed you when you said the doctors agreed." He took a step toward her. "But you never thought I'd check." Rachel's confidence wavered. "Ethan, don't do this." He pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. Screenshots. The Airbnb listing. The payments. The forged authorization. Her face went pale. "You went through my things?" she whispered. "I went through the truth," he said. That's when she snapped. "You're choosing him over me?" she shouted. "After everything I've done?" I spoke before Ethan could respond. "You chose money over family," I said evenly. She turned on me, her voice dripping with contempt. "You should have stayed quiet. This could have been peaceful." "Peaceful? By locking me away?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "Pack your things." Her eyes widened. "You don't mean that." "I do," he said. "You crossed a line." She laughed hysterically. "You can't kick me out. This is my home, too." "No," Ethan said. "It's my father's." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear. But it didn't last. "If you do this," she hissed, "I'll tell everyone what you've been hiding." My heart skipped. "What are you talking about?" Ethan asked sharply. Rachel smiled, a dangerous, knowing smile. "Oh," she said softly. "You didn't think your father was just a gym teacher forever, did you?" Ethan turned to me slowly. "Dad, What is she talking about? I met his eyes and realized the past I'd buried was about to surface. If you're still here, you're going to want to see what comes next. Subscribe now, because the truth about my past changes everything. In part 4, Rachel reveals what she thinks is my darkest secret, only to discover she never understood it at all. Part 4, the secret she thought would ruin me. Rachel's words hung in the air like poison. You didn't think your father was just a gym teacher forever, did you? Ethan's eyes searched my face, confused, cautious. Dad, he said slowly. What is she talking about? I took a breath. For years, I had lived quietly, intentionally. I taught early morning fitness classes, trained local kids for free, fixed my own roof, drove the same old sedan. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. Rachel mistook simplicity for weakness. I'll tell him, she said smugly, stepping forward. Your father lied about who he was, about where his money came from, about why he never needed help. Ethan turned to her sharply. Rachel, he doesn't know, she cut in, eyes locked on me. Does he? I nodded once. He doesn't. Rachel's lips curled. Figures. She crossed her arms like a prosecutor delivering a final blow. Your father wasn't just a gym teacher, she said. He used to be someone important, someone with connections, someone who walked away with money he never explained. Ethan frowned. Walked away from what? From a world you don't belong in? She snapped at me. From power. I finally spoke. I walked away from a life that cost people their souls. Silence. Rachel scoffed. Don't dramatize it. I looked at her calmly. You broke into my house. You forged documents. You locked me away. And you think I'm the one who should be ashamed? Ethan raised his voice. Rachel, stop. Now. But she was too far gone. You're hiding something, she said, pointing at me. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows. She pulled out her phone. Ethan stepped in front of her. What are you doing? Calling someone, she replied. Someone who remembers who your father really is. My chest tightened. She dialed. Hello? She said sweetly. Yes, I need confirmation about a man named. That won't work, I said. She paused. What? The number you're calling hasn't been active in 6 years. Her smile faltered. I know, I continued up. Because I shut it down. Ethan stared at me. Dad? Rachel's confidence cracked. Just a hair. You can't control everything, she snapped. I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a thin folder on the table. I don't need to, I said. I prepared. Ethan picked it up and flipped it open. Inside were documents, legal filings, property records, trust agreements. His eyebrows shot up. Dad, this is my house. I finished. Still mine. Untouched. Protected. Rachel lunged for the folder. That's impossible. I had a lawyer. Yes, I said. One who works for me. She froze. Ethan looked up sharply. What? Rachel's voice shook. You planned this? I met her gaze. I anticipated people like you. She laughed nervously. You expect us to believe you're some kind of mastermind? No, I replied. Just someone who learned early what greed looks like. Ethan flipped another page. His hands trembled. Dad, he whispered. This trust. It's enormous. Rachel's face drained of color. That's a lie, she said weakly. It's audited, I replied. Quarterly. She staggered back. And why pretend to be broke? Because money changes how people treat you, I said. And I wanted to know who loved me without it. Ethan swallowed hard. And now? He asked. I looked at Rachel. No. Her voice rose to a shriek. You tricked us. No, I said evenly. You revealed yourselves. Ethan turned to her, pain written all over his face. You tried to erase my father. She burst into tears, but there was no remorse in them. You think this is over? She sobbed. I'll fight you. I'll take you to court. I nodded slowly. I was hoping you would. She blinked. What? Because there's one more thing you don't know, I said. Something that makes this much worse for you. Ethan looked at me. Dad? I opened the final page of the folder. Rachel gasped. No, she whispered. That's not possible. But it was. And it meant everything was about to change. Don't miss what comes next. If you want to see how the tables completely turn, subscribe now because part 5 is where justice stops being quiet. In part 5, Rachel discovers that her biggest mistake wasn't locking me away. It was underestimating who was watching the entire time. Part 5, the consequences he never saw coming. Rachel stared at the final page like it was written in a foreign language. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Ethan leaned closer, reading over her shoulder. His face went completely still. Dad, he whispered. This says, yes, I said calmly. It says exactly what you think it does. Rachel shook her head violently. Nope, this is fake. This has to be fake. She grabbed her phone again, hands trembling, and started dialing. Straight to voicemail. Again. Nothing. I watched her unravel without raising my voice. The agreement you signed when you married Ethan, I continued, included a morality clause, standard when family assets are involved. Ethan looked at me sharply. What assets? I met his eyes. Mine. Rachel froze. You? You put conditions on our marriage? She whispered. No, I replied. I protected my son. Her voice cracked. This is abuse of power. I smiled sadly. Locking an elderly man in a nursing home is abuse of power. Renting his house while he's trapped inside is abuse of power. This is accountability. Ethan stepped back, running a hand through his hair. You told me you were just a gym teacher, he said quietly. I was, I replied. I am. Titles don't change character. Rachel laughed hysterically. So what now? You throw me out? You humiliate me? I don't need to, I said. You did that yourself. There was a knock at the door. Rachel jumped. Ethan frowned. Who's that? I checked my watch. Right on time. Ethan opened the door. 2 people stood there. A woman in a tailored suit holding a leather folder, and a uniformed officer. Rachel screamed. You called the police? No, I said calmly. The nursing home administrator did. False imprisonment isn't a family matter. The officer stepped inside. Rachel Carter? She backed away. This is a misunderstanding. The lawyer spoke next. And I'm here to inform you that all income generated from the Airbnb listing has been frozen pending investigation. The property was never legally yours to list. Rachel collapsed into a chair. Ethan stared at her like he was seeing a stranger. You did all this for money? He asked. She looked up at him, eyes wild. I did it for security. For control, I corrected. The officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us to answer some questions. Rachel looked at Ethan desperately. You're not going to let them take me. Ethan didn't move. I loved you, he said quietly, but I won't protect this. As they let her out, she turned to me one last time. You think you've won, she spat. But families don't survive this. I met her gaze steadily. Families don't survive lies. The door closed. Silence filled the house. Ethan sank onto the couch, his hands shaking. I don't know how I didn't see it, he said. I sat beside him. Because you trusted her. That's not weakness. He looked at me, eyes wet. I'm sorry. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You came when it mattered. Outside, the sound of the car engine faded. Inside, something else began to rebuild. Not peace. Truth. What's next? If you're still watching, subscribe, because the next part isn't about revenge. It's about what happens after everything breaks. In part 6, Ethan faces a decision that will redefine his future, and Rachel makes one final move from the outside that threatens it all. Part 6. What comes after? The door closes. The house felt too quiet after Rachel was gone. Not peaceful. Empty. Ethan sat on the couch, staring at the floor like the ground had betrayed him. For the first time since he was a child, I saw him unsure of where to place his weight. I don't know what to do next, he admitted. Everything I planned, it was built around her. That doesn't mean it was built by her, I replied. He nodded, but the pain didn't lift. That night, Ethan barely slept. Neither did I, 'cause when lies collapse, they don't fall neatly. They scatter. The next morning, Ethan's phone started buzzing nonstop. Messages, missed calls, emails. Not from Rachel, from people, mutual friends, co-workers, even distant relatives. Rachel hadn't stayed quiet. She'd posted a long, emotional message online, carefully written, full of tears and half-truths. She claimed she was protecting me, that Ethan was being manipulated, that she was being punished for doing the right thing. By noon, the comments were divided. Some defended her. Some questioned her story. Some asked dangerous questions. Ethan slammed his phone down. She's rewriting everything. Yes, I said, because she can't control the present anymore. So she's trying to control the narrative. But people are believing her, he said bitterly. Some will, I answered, until facts arrive. As if on cue, his phone rang again. This time, it was his company's HR department. His expression tightened as he listened. When he hung up, he looked at me slowly. She contacted my employer, he said. Told them you were unstable, that I was under pressure. My jaw clenched. Did they believe her? I asked. They said they're reviewing the situation. There it was. Her final weapon. Not money, not charm. Doubt. That evening, Ethan paced the living room. I won't let her destroy everything, he said. I'll post the truth. I'll show the documents. No, I said firmly. He stopped. Why not? Because reacting emotionally gives her control, I replied. We respond strategically. I walked to my desk and pulled out a thin envelope. I was hoping we wouldn't need this, I said. But she left us no choice. Ethan opened it. Inside were certified copies of reports, police intake records, the nursing home's internal findings, a notarized statement from the administrator. His eyes widened. This is undeniable. Exactly, I said. And it doesn't come from us. Ethan swallowed. Then what do we do? We wait, I replied. They let the truth speak where emotion can't. 2 days later, the story shifted. A local journalist reached out carefully, respectfully. Can you confirm the nursing home placement? She asked Ethan. He said yes. She asked for documentation. We provided it. The article didn't attack Rachel. It simply laid out facts, timelines, signatures, financial records. By evening, the comments changed. Sympathy moved. Questions sharpened. Rachel's post disappeared. Ethan's employer called the next morning. They apologized. Formally. After reviewing verified information, HR said, "We see no cause for concern." Ethan closed his eyes in relief. But just as things began to stabilize, Rachel made one last move. A legal one. Don't stop here. If you're still watching, subscribe now because Part 7 brings the courtroom threat that could take everything, or finally end it. In Part 7, Rachel files a lawsuit and forces Ethan and me into a fight neither of us wanted, but both are ready to finish. Part 7. The lawsuit. The envelope arrived on a Thursday morning. No warning. No call. Just thick paper and official seals. Ethan opened it at the kitchen counter. He didn't need to read past the first page to know what it was. She's suing us, he said quietly. I nodded. I expected it. Rachel wasn't fighting for money anymore. She was fighting for control. The lawsuit accused me of emotional manipulation, coercion, and undue influence over Ethan. She claimed I had orchestrated everything from the nursing home placement fallout to her arrest, to turn my son against her. She's saying you manipulated me, Ethan said, disbelief in his voice, like I'm a child. She needs a villain, I replied, and she can't be one. Ethan slammed the papers down. I won't let her do this. You won't have to, I said calmly. You just have to tell the truth. The first hearing was set for 2 weeks later. Rachel didn't show fear in court. She showed performance. She cried at the right moments, spoke softly about confusion and misunderstandings, painted herself as a devoted wife, pushed aside by an overbearing father. Her lawyer leaned heavily into one idea, that I had pretended to be helpless to manipulate sympathy. He played poor, the lawyer said. He played weak. I stood when it was my turn. I didn't play weak, I said evenly. I lived honestly. The judge listened. No interruption. No reaction. Rachel's lawyer smirked, until my attorney stood and began laying out facts. Phone records showing my phone confiscated. Medical evaluations stating I was fully capable. Airbnb income records deposited into Rachel's private account. And one detail that made the courtroom shift. The signed emergency authorization. Forged. Rachel's face went pale. Her lawyer whispered urgently. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Carter, she said, do you deny signing this document? Rachel hesitated. I believed I had authority. Do you deny signing it? The judge repeated. Rachel swallowed. No. The room went silent. The judge nodded slowly. We will adjourn for today. Rachel's confidence shattered as the gavel struck. Outside the courtroom, Ethan exhaled shakily. She really thought she could rewrite reality, he said. People who rely on control always do, I replied. But the battle wasn't over, 'cause Rachel had one more card to play. That night, Ethan received a message from Rachel. Not angry, not threatening, desperate. If you don't stop this, I'll tell them everything about your father's past. Ethan showed me the phone. I don't even know what she thinks she knows, he said. I looked at the message carefully. Then I smiled. Good, I said. Ethan frowned. Good? Yes, I replied. Because she's about to expose the wrong truth. What comes next? If you've stayed this far, subscribe. Because in part 8, Rachel finally reveals what she thinks is my darkest secret, and it changes the entire case. In part 8, Rachel's final accusation backfires when my past is revealed, not as a weakness, but as the reason I was prepared for all of this. Part 8, the truth she thought would destroy me. Rachel didn't wait for the next hearing. She wanted spectacle. 2 days after her message, an anonymous tip appeared online, sent to a gossip blog that loved stories about hidden wealth and fake humility. The headline spread fast. Elderly man pretended to be poor while controlling. Son's marriage, dark past revealed. Ethan found it first. They're calling you a fraud, he said, anger shaking his voice. They say you manipulated everyone. I read the article calmly. It mentioned my old company, my early retirement, suggested I'd hidden assets to test loyalty, and at the end, one final claim. Sources say his past includes activities he doesn't want public. Rachel's move was clear. If she couldn't win in court, she'd poison perception. She thinks this will scare you, Ethan said, or shame you. I folded the paper. She still doesn't understand me. The second hearing was packed. Not because of Rachel. Because of the article, Rachel sat straighter than before, a quiet confidence in her posture. She believed she'd finally shifted the balance. Her lawyer stood. We intend to present new evidence regarding Mr. Carter's past, he announced. Evidence that demonstrates long-term dissection. The judge nodded once. Proceed. Rachel glanced at me. I met her eyes and waited. Her lawyer began carefully. He claims to be a retired gym teacher. Her records show he once held executive authority in a private firm that dissolved under questionable circumstances. Questionable. A word designed to rot minds. Rachel leaned forward slightly, watching Ethan's reaction. Then my attorney stood. Your Honor, she said, before speculation continues, we request permission for my client to clarify his past in full. The judge nodded. Granted. I stood. Slowly. The room went quiet. I never denied my past, I said. I chose not to advertise it. Rachel's lawyer scoffed. Convenient. I ignored him. 25 years ago, I co-founded a logistics company, I continued. It grew faster than I expected, and it attracted people who valued profit over ethics. I paused. When I discovered illegal activity, bribery, falsified safety reports, I reported it. Rachel frowned. I went on. I resigned, cooperated with federal investigators, and testified. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The company dissolved, I said calmly. Executives went to prison. I walked away with a settlement that reflected my cooperation, not silence. Rachel's confidence wavered. Her lawyer flipped through papers frantically. I retired early, I continued, because I didn't want my son growing up around power that demanded compromise. I looked at Ethan, and I taught fitness because I enjoy honest work. The judge leaned forward. Are there records of this cooperation? My attorney stood and handed over a folder. Sealed documents. Court acknowledgments. A letter of commendation. The judge read silently. Rachel's lawyer said nothing. Rachel's face drained of color. You? You were a whistleblower? She whispered. Yes, I replied. That's the truth you thought would ruin me. Ethan exhaled sharply. Rachel's lawyer sat down slowly. The judge closed the folder. Mrs. Carter, she said firmly, this court sees no deception here, only discretion. Rachel's shoulders slumped. Her last weapon had failed. Worse, it had turned against her. Outside the courtroom, cameras waited. Ethan shielded me instinctively, but I stepped forward. I lived quietly because I wanted peace, I said, not because I had something to hide. The article disappeared by evening. So did Rachel's supporters. That night, Ethan sat across from me at the kitchen table. I didn't know, he said softly. You didn't need to, I replied. You trusted me. That was enough. He nodded, eyes shining. She thought your past was a weakness. I smiled faintly. It was my training. Rachel had one hearing left, one decision pending, and one outcome she could no longer control. Final stretch. If you've made it this far, subscribe, because part 9 is where the judge delivers the ruling, and Rachel learns what accountability really costs. In part 9, the court makes its decision, and the consequences are permanent. Part 9, the judgment. The courtroom was quieter than before. No whispers, no reporters shifting in their seats. Just anticipation. Rachel sat stiffly beside her lawyer, hands folded so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The confidence she once wore like armor was gone. In its place was something far more dangerous as preparation. Ethan sat beside me, back straight, eyes forward. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. The judge adjusted her glasses and spoke plainly. No drama, no softness. This court has reviewed all evidence submitted in this matter, she began, including medical evaluations, financial records, testimony, and documented timelines. Rachel swallowed hard. The court finds that Mr. Carter was unlawfully placed in a nursing facility without medical necessity, the judge continued, and that Mrs. Carter acted without legal authority. Rachel's lawyer started to speak. The judge raised a hand. Sit down. The room froze. Furthermore, the judge said, the use of Mr. Carter's property for personal financial gain without consent constitutes exploitation. Rachel's eyes darted to Ethan. He didn't look back. The judge turned her gaze toward Rachel. Mrs. Carter, your actions demonstrate a pattern of manipulation, misrepresentation, and coercive control. Each word landed heavier than the last. The civil claims against Mr. Carter are dismissed in full. A breath escaped Ethan's chest. The court orders immediate restitution of all funds obtained through the unauthorized rental of the property, the judge continued. In addition, this court grants a permanent protective order preventing Mrs. Carter from acting in any legal or financial capacity involving Mr. Carter. Rachel shook her head, tears spilling. Please, this court is not finished, the judge said firmly. Rachel went silent. Regarding your marriage, the judge said, glancing at Ethan and then back at Rachel, this court strongly recommends independent counsel. The message was clear. This was over. The gavel struck. Just once. Outside the courthouse, the air felt lighter. Not triumphant. Just honest. Rachel exited later, flanked by her lawyer, avoiding cameras. No statements. No tears for the press. Ethan watched her go. I don't recognize her anymore, he said quietly. I think, I replied. You're finally seeing her clearly. He nodded. Dad, he said after a moment, I should have protected you. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You did. When it mattered. That evening, we returned to the house. My house. It felt different now. Not restored, but reclaimed. Ethan helped me bring my old furniture back from storage. My chair. My books. The framed photo of his mother I'd taken down when strangers slept under this roof. We worked in silence. Then Ethan spoke. I'm filing for separation, he said. I didn't react. I'd known. I loved who I thought she was. He continued. But I won't build a future on control. I nodded. That's how cycles end. Later that night, Ethan sat across from me at the table. You could have destroyed her, he said. You had the power. I had restraint, I replied. That's different. He smiled faintly. I'm proud of you. I looked at my son, tired, wiser, free. I'm proud of you too. Rachel lost more than a lawsuit. She lost access. She lost leverage. She lost the narrative. And for the first time since this began, she had no one to manage, only consequences to face. In Part 10, final. Life moves forward. Healing begins. And I make one final decision about my home, my future, and what freedom really means. Part 10. Coming home. The house was quiet again. Not the hollow silence it had worn when strangers passed through it, but the kind that feels earned, the kind that lets you breathe. Sunlight fell across the living room floor, where my old rug had been rolled back out. The walls held familiar pictures again. My life returned piece by piece. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, keys still in my hand. For weeks, this house had been used as leverage, as currency, as something to be traded while I was locked away. Now it was simply home. Ethan joined me, carrying a box of books from the garage. I didn't realize how much of you this place held, he said softly. That's why she wanted it, I replied. People don't steal what's empty. He nodded. Life didn't magically become perfect after the verdict. There were hard conversations, paperwork, lawyers. Rachel moved out quietly. No final confrontation. No dramatic apology. Just distance. Ethan grieved, not for the woman she was, but for the future he'd imagined with her. Some nights he sat at the kitchen table long after dinner, staring into nothing. I didn't try to fix it. Some lessons need space. One evening, Ethan surprised me. I've been offered a transfer, he said. Different city. Fresh start. I studied his face. Do you want it? He thought for a moment. Yes, but only if you're okay. I smiled. I've lived enough lives to know when it's time to let someone else begin theirs. He swallowed. You don't have to be alone. I won't be, I said. I'll be free. Before he left, we walked through the house one last time together. I'm not selling it, I told him. Not renting it. Not turning it into anything else. He smiled. Good. This house stays what it always was, I continued. A place where no one is managed. Where no one is silenced. Ethan hugged me tightly. I see you now, he said. I closed my eyes. That's all I ever wanted. Months later, I ran into Rachel once. By accident. She looked smaller. Not weaker. Just strips of certainty. She didn't approach me. And I didn't approach her. Some endings don't need words. People still ask me why I didn't fight louder. Why I didn't expose her sooner. Why I chose patience over revenge. The answer is simple. Power shouts. Dignity waits. I showed up as a broke retiree because I wanted truth. Not respect borrowed from money. What I found instead was clarity. about family, about control, about what freedom really costs, and what it's worth. The door to my house closed gently behind me that night. Not locked. Never locked again. The end.